Back to our phone callers. Next up is Tom. He's listening in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and listening on the web. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Hank. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a long-time listener. I really appreciate your ministry. I have always thought if I talked to you, I'd be asking you a Bible question, but this is more of a situation. I lost... I lost my son last November, and he was a believer. And I don't want you to think I don't have peace with God taking him home. But, as far as being prepared to give an answer, I find myself at a loss, when I'm asked about him dying so young. He was 28, and he was starting to put things back together in his life. He was in the military. He was in Iraq for 13 months, and he suffered from PTSD, and he suffered from some drug addiction. But he was really making strides, and the VA was really wonderful. But to this day, people will ask me and talk to me about my faith, and my faith is strong. I don't want you to think it's not. But I just would like to ask you, biblically, and even to those on the outside, how do you respond?
Well, Tom, first of all, my condolences. And, sometimes my kids, and I have 12 of them, they kid me about this very thing. My son Hank, the other day, I was with him in Oklahoma, and we were visiting my son-in-law and my daughter and grandchildren. And while I was doing that, we were driving back, and he made a flippant remark about him dying before me. And I usually like to joke around with my kids, but that was one of those occasions in which I looked at Hank and said, "Don't even say that." And he said, you always react the same way to that. And he began to understand why. I mean, it's a very difficult thing for a parent to imagine burying one of their kids. So again, I have some sense of how horrible that would be, not only because of the anecdote I just shared with you, but also because we lost a preborn child. And the answer to your question is simply this. God does not answer the why question. So I want to make sure that you understand that, Tom. God simply doesn't answer the question you just asked. What he does is he teaches us to trust him in the midst of our whys. So we cannot say for certain why God took your son. What we can do is say, with Job, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Which is to say that God's purposes are higher than our purposes. They're beyond our full comprehension. He sees the panoply of life, and he does what he does for noble reasons. And if you love him, you can trust him, and that's good enough. But you cannot explain to anyone the answer to the why question. You can just trust God in the midst of your whys, and that should be sufficient. He has demonstrated himself to you, and you've indicated that in the prologue to your question, that he is trustworthy. But he doesn't explain so that you can understand. He is simply saying, trust me. I have a purpose, I have a plan, and my purposes and plan are perfect. And you have to leave it there. And the reason you can leave it there with faith, as you've expressed, again, in the prologue to your question, is because God has demonstrated himself to be trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. And it quite honestly, it's been an opportunity since Tom's passed that God has put people in front of me that have come around us and helped us to actually grow in faith and grow in trust, because that, as you were speaking, I was thinking that is the answer to my question, or the framework of where I'm at is to trust. And I just know we had so little time together as you look back on the years, but I thank you for your answer. It's a blessing to hear from you and to hear you say those things.
Well, again, my condolences, and I want to send out a book, and I will personalize it to you just as a remembrance of this conversation we had, because you'll go through the cauldron of despair many times in the future, and maybe you can turn to some words that will give you hope and peace in the midst of the storm. I've said this many times, but Christianity does not give us a peaceful way to come to terms with the maladies of life. What it does is it gives us something far better, the hope of overcoming all of this through resurrection. So ultimately, what is your hope? Well, you know your Son is going to rise immortal, imperishable, incorruptible, not because he did everything perfectly, but because he trusted someone who did everything perfectly in his place. So you have the certainty that you will see your Son again, and that will ultimately help you overcome the doubt and the despair that will be like rivers that wash over you from time to time. And so you want to keep going back to the objective truth of the Lord's Word. You can trust him. He's revealed himself as trustworthy. Therefore, you can depend that he has everything perfectly worked out. And there's going to be a time where you enjoy your Son's presence with no more death, mourning, crying, or pain, for the old order of things will have passed away. All things will become new. I'll actually personalize this to you, and then I'll also I'll put a sticky in a particular place that I think will be very, very helpful for you to read and reread.
Okay, Hank, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure. Our thoughts and prayers go with you.
Thank you.
God bless you, Tom.